So mediumship is the capacity to access some information you're not supposed to have access to through the common senses. So it's something, you have some information, you don't know necessarily how you got it. Lots of mediums think they're communicating with spirits. That's not necessarily what we think. We do experiments. We just think they're getting some information they're not supposed to. And that's what we're trying to test. When I remember I was at school, I was like about 12, and then the thought struck me. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but then I realized I was in the courtyard in the suburbs of Paris, and I realized, okay, I want to know why I'm here. I want to, and in my upbringing, that meant, okay, if you want to know why you're here, you're going to study the brain and you're going to be a brain scientist. So that's what I did. I became a brain scientist. And then, long story short, I realized science can only tell you how things work. It's not going to tell you why things are the way they are. So when you work with neurons, you just assume, well, the neurons behave the way they do because then we have the molecular mechanisms, and then at the higher level we have the cognition. But I just work on my small level, which are the neurons. But the reason I became interested in mediumship specifically was because so the issue with the Western approach, the scientific approach to the mind and consciousness, is that it emerges from matter, inert matter. And there's no model that can really explain how this happens. And so the alternative view is that consciousness is more than just matter, it's just more than organization. Matter is something that might be fundamental. Like you have the force of nature, gravity. Consciousness must be as fundamental as gravity. We just don't understand how this is linked yet with the other laws of nature. That's one hypothesis, doesn't mean it's real. But that's the hypothesis I was interested in studying. And to show there's a link between consciousness and other physical law, you need a paradigm. And you need a paradigm that breaks what we currently know. And so, for example, in mediumship, they do predictions. Or if you go see a medium, he's going to tell you, oh, I see your deceased relative, and this was their hobbies, and this is where they were, etc. And there is no way they can acquire that information through a classical means. Sometimes they can, but most often they cannot. In the experiments we do, they cannot, because we make sure they cannot do that. So when they're able to do that, it goes beyond the standard laws of physics we know. So it allows to probe, okay, what's the possible link? How do they get that information? Is there like some global unconscious they can access? Or how does it work? So that's why I became interested in mediumship. There might be some mediums like this, and that's called cold reading. They just throw some questions and then try to infer from what they answer. All the experiments we do are double-blinded. So, for example, if you want a reading from a medium, we're going to say, okay, we know someone who wants a reading from a medium. She wants a reading about Paolo or something. And then that's all we give the medium, Paolo, the name. And then they have to tell us things about Paolo. So the only link is that you want the reading about Paolo. And and so then we give you the reading, and you have to judge if it's correct or not. But we also give you a second reading that wasn't for you, and we replace the name with Paolo, and then we see, do you score better on the real Paolo, the reading that was meant for you, than on the one where we replaced the name? And if you do, then we can assess, okay, the medium did better than chance to do a real reading for you compared to the other one, which we call the sham reading. So all the real readings are compared to sham reading, and that's very important because you could be you could have an approach that's very positive about mediumship. And so, for example, the medium could say, oh, Paolo was a plumber. And then no, Paolo wasn't a plumber, he was an electrician. But it's kind of the same trade, electrician. So I'm going to rate that very high. Paolo was almost correct. And some other people might be very skeptical. And they say, oh, Paolo was a plumber. No, he was an electrician. That's completely wrong. So your assessment is very subjective. But if we compare your assessment on the real reading compared to the assessment on the sham reading, then we can, by making the difference, then we can cancel out your bias. Lots of people who are skeptical about mediumship also say, oh, they're just imagining things. They're not really in contact with anybody. They're just imagining things. And so that's what we try to do. We had what we call a block design, where we had block of 1 minute, and we're asking the medium, okay, now just imagine somebody. Okay, now think of your relative for 1 minute. So imagine somebody for 1 minute. Think about your relative for 1 minute. Now do mediumship for 1 minute. And usually they pick somebody they were used to contact, like a deceased relative. And then listen to a story for 1 minute. And we compared these 4 mental states, and then we also repeated them. So they're repeated 4 times. And what we found is that when we asked them to do a reading, the brain activity was different compared to when we asked them to imagine someone. It doesn't prove mediumship is real. It just proves when they are doing a reading, they're not in the same mental states as when they are listening to a story or imagining someone or thinking of someone. Yeah, so we had 2 iterations of that experiment. The first one, we asked people, and these were mediums, all from the San Francisco area that we recruited, and we had, I think, 12 mediums. So they came to the lab, and we put the brainwave cap on them, and we asked them, okay, you're going to see some pictures. Tell me if this person is alive or deceased. Half of the people were alive, and half of the people were deceased. And they actually had 5 choices. I don't know. I think so. I'm sure so. I don't think so. I'm sure they're deceased, for example. And we found positive evidence that globally all the mediums except one were able to score above what we call chance expectation. And when we took all the data together, we had what we call a very significant effect, which is a very unlikely to just happen by chance. We also had robots. It wasn't a physical robot, it was more a computer program that was responding randomly to check, there's no error of the program. And this one scored at chance level. Now, a problem with this experiment was that the database was not extremely stable, in the sense that, unfortunately, people die all the time. So the people in our alive category could very well be in the deceased category. And it was also relatively hard to check, because these were pictures from the 1960s, classroom pictures. We took classroom pictures because then we knew there wouldn't be any bias. If I ask you, okay, give me a picture of your deceased relative, you're going to give me a very special picture. You're going to give me a picture of somebody that looks distant, doesn't look deceased, but it's going to look a very specific way. It's going to be very different than if I ask you to give me a picture of someone who is alive, just because you have an internal bias in selecting the picture. So we took pictures of classroom pictures. So then everybody, it's the same type of picture for everybody, and then we had half of them were deceased and half of them were alive. And then we took extra care. We had a special software which we designed, so we counted the number of people who had smiles. So we didn't want more alive people with smile and deceased people with no smile. We wanted the same number of smile. We wanted the same number of men and women. We wanted the same type of age range. We didn't want all the old people to look old and the young people to, and the alive people to. So we had like about 7 different categories, even down to the aspect of the image. You know, is it blurry, is it not blurry, etc. And so in the next experiment, what we did, in the first experiment we only had medium, so this was an imitation. So in the next experiment we did medium and control. And we also changed the type of image that people would classify. They wouldn't just say alive or deceased, they would just see all deceased individual, and they would have to select how did this person die. And there were 3 categories, 3 ways a person could die. One was of car accident, one was of a gunshot, and one was heart attack. And we picked these 3 because these are fairly common. And then we had, I think, 1/3 of the pictures were from each category. And so it was the same experiment. We had people come from the labs. This time we had 12 mediums and 12 controls. They came to the lab, they see the picture, and they had to press one of 3 buttons. I think this person died of a heart attack. This person died of a gunshot. And in all these experiments, we're not necessarily demonstrating mediumship. We're just demonstrating that it might be mediumship. Because what can happen is that you know, if you press, okay, this person is going to die of a heart attack, it could very well be that the person looks a specific way. They have some facial traits that indicate a heart attack. Actually, if you're a smoker and you ask people, is this person a smoker or not, you can actually detect with not super high confidence, but very well above chance if this person is smoking or not, just because of their facial features. If you look, and there are studies on twins, one is smoking, one is not smoking, they have very different faces. So it could very well be that just seeing their face 40 years or 6 years before they die, you could predict they're going to have a heart attack. But it's unlikely. And so it's also possible that, you know, it could be some mediumship. I don't know. I mean, I'm doing the science. You know, this is more philosophical questions. You know, I live my life as if, yeah, we're all connected. We're all connected anyway. You know, whether we're directly connected or not, we're all connected through nature, through even through, you know, purely material world. Everything is connected to each other. You know, from the quantum physical perspective, atoms don't even exist. These are just swarm of probabilities. And everything is connected to each other. But yeah, whether consciousness, we're connected at the conscious level or not, I think it's an open question that we're trying to tackle. And so we found, you know, positive evidence. Now, experiment by itself doesn't prove anything. You need other labs to repeat it and demonstrate it and do the same experiments that you did, find the same results, and then when many lab has done that, then becomes convincing evidence. One issue we have is that we don't know the mechanism yet, so it's very hard to make inference. When you know the mechanism very well, then you can make experiments with where you just ask very specific questions. Here we're just showing, okay, there is this effect, but we still have to understand the underlying mechanism. I think meditation is the time where your mind stops racing. So if you're in a beautiful landscape and you smell the fresh air, and then you're happy to be here, and your mind stop racing. So meditation is not necessarily the happy part, it's more like your mind stop racing. And when your mind stop racing, what happens is that with practice, you can actually see the thoughts coming back, popping up, and they don't necessarily Because usually when you have a thought, you think, this is my thought. I want to go drink some water right now. But when you're in meditation, you have the thought, I want to go drink some water, but you just see it passing through. And it doesn't necessarily belong to you, it's just a thought that's passing through. So I think this is what meditation is, just calming the mind and seeing the racing thoughts and the activity in your mind. And also becoming more detached from your thoughts. And so when you're angry at someone, you just feel it usually. You're just like, I'm just so angry at that person. But when you're meditating, if you're in a good space, it doesn't always happen. Even professional meditators can't do it perfectly. But sometimes you'll see that thought, I'm angry, and then just be like, oh, this thought is like a virus trying to take over my body, and I'm not gonna ride it. And the thought of not riding it is not a thought. So I mean, it's not like one thought is better than the other. But then you realize this, and then you just become more happy, because you're not going for everything your mind tells you should go for. Yeah, they each have different signature. We actually had a project where we compared different types of meditation. So some Vipassana meditation, which is a body scan, where you feel the sensation in your fingers, and then you feel the sensation in your arm, etc. So you scan your body. So this was one type of meditation. We also studied a mantra meditation. So mantra meditation, you have a mantra, which is usually a short sentence or sometimes just a syllable that you repeat over and over again. And then we also tested a Zen type meditation. So Zen type meditation is you just sit and watch whatever arises in your mind, in your body. So we compare these three types of meditation, and we found different brain signature for this type of meditation. But eventually I still do believe that if you any of these meditation, you will see your thought arises, and that'll give you insights on the thought process, and that's one of the main benefits. It doesn't matter if you repeat a mantra and you'll have some thoughts, but because you repeat a mantra at the same time, you realize, oh, I wasn't supposed to think this thought, I just wanted to do my mantra. So you realize you have no control over your thoughts. Same for the body scan. You'll scan your body and you'll have some thoughts, but you wanted to just do a body scan. And same when you're doing just sitting. You just wanted to sit and listen and feel your body, but you have these thoughts, racing in your mind. So I do think the process of becoming aware of your thoughts and that you're not your thoughts is comparable in all the meditation traditions. We were trying to see if for meditators, when you're in a state of meditation, we're going to stimulate you either visually. So when you have the glasses, it's a very strong visual stimulation, or you hear the sound. These are loud noise. So we're going to startle you, and then because you're very calm, the idea is that your physiology, or you might be able to pick up on the upcoming danger or starting stimulus that's coming. So this is why we did this experiment. And we did find some indication then in the brainwave. There could be some difference before some of the stimulus as compared to others, like the visual. The idea is that the visual stimulus, you're gonna have some activity before the stimulus arrives in the visual area of the brain, so visual cortex, and the auditory stimulus, you can have some activity in the auditory. Yeah, anybody can meditate and become aware, and the difficulty is more in the frequency. In the sense, you have a guided meditation and with a very good guide, and then you'll become aware of that, and then you'll have some glimpse. And the difficulty is to do that more often, so it becomes second nature. It's like you become angry at someone. It's like, oh, just like it's just something in my thought. It just translates to your life, and that's the part that's hard, and that's the part that requires practice, and that's the part that even expert meditators who meditate in caves for years, I don't think they master it perfectly. I mean, you might have some hours where okay, you're really detached from your thoughts and just blissfully happy, but I don't think even for them it doesn't last forever, and they come back to the reactive pattern. Well, the mental state you achieve when you're meditating, and again, I'm like another expert meditator. I'm more like a meditation researcher. The state you achieve is more a state of a pure consciousness, in the sense that you just are. You just are. You just are now. Just like you just exist. You just feel the sensation of existing, and that's the strong feeling of it's not necessarily existing, it's just strong feeling of being here now. You're just here now, and you enjoy the present moment, and you feel more alive than you've ever been. Yeah, and I think it's not detached is not the right word. It's not detached because you still really deeply care about your relative who has cancer or something. It's just you're not caught into the thinking, the pathological thinking of worrying. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna? And every time you see them, you might just feel so sad. You have to avoid them. Now you're really in the present, and you go see them. You're just happy to see them. You're sad at the same time, but also you're just happy to be here now. Be with them, instead of just like constantly, thinking and projecting ideas. I think you have to practice the desire to be happier. You just have to really want to be happier, because meditation is about becoming happier. People meditate because they want to be more happy. And we all want to be more happy. And so I think if you have the desire to be more at peace and happy, then you'll find your path. And that doesn't necessarily have to be meditation. Maybe you just like to take hikes in the forest, and that is your meditation. Or maybe you just like to go talk to your grandmother and she tells you a story, and that is your meditation. You don't have to sit like an Indian monk.